Amy, there's a social media ban in Australia.
Yep.
Talk to us.
Yep. So Australia has decided to enforce a law. It is the very first of its kind where anybody under the age of 16 is banned from having a social media account. This won by massive majority in the Senate, 34 to 19 votes. And we're going to go ahead and play a video for just about a minute so you guys can get an idea. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how this is actually being enforced.
In a world first, Australian children under 16 will be banned from social media as Parliament passes strict new laws. The move has attracted global attention, with the Albanese government rushing the bill through, along with more than 40 others.
Striding towards Christmas with a cheer, one chuffed Prime Minister.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Anthony Albanese celebrating a Senate success.
What we're doing is getting things done.
A long night in the upper house
that the Senate do now adjourn.
After a mad rush to ram through more than 30 bills.
Sometimes it's a frustrating chamber, to say the least, and difficult to progress legislation.
But progress was made. 45 pieces of legislation passing this week, majority of them sailing through overnight, including contentious changes to toughen up migration laws and a bold social media ban for teenagers.
All right, we can cut it there.
This is a rubbish bill.
Well, they're just rushing to do all this stuff before the new year.
Pretty much. Now, it's kind of interesting the manner in which this is going to be enforced. You can actually click through to the next one, Jake. We can pop this up on the screen and I'm going to read it out. So the law will make platforms including TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, Reddit, X, and Instagram liable for fines up to 50 million Australian dollars, which is 33 million US, for systemic failures to prevent children younger than 16 from holding accounts. It's clear that social media companies have to be held accountable, which is what Australia is trying to do, which was said by Jim Sayer, the president and CEO of the non-profit Common Sense Media.
So they're because they're banning 16 and under, it's going to be Facebook, Instagram, X, and all these people's responsibilities to make sure that your freaking country's kids aren't going on social media, and then they're going to get fined.
Correct. So the onus of responsibility is completely on the companies and seems to be not so much with the parents. But I want to go through and get each of your guys' perspectives. And then I'm going to let you know what I think as someone who's kind of been following the news and following a lot of the stuff, the legislation that's passing in Australia, and what I think this is all leading towards. But Vinny, what do you think about this overall?
Well, first of all, that part of it where it's making like TikTok, they're going to be liable for anything that like the children are going to be doing, like because they have to put safeguards to make sure, I don't know how the algorithm or whatever works, that if you're under 16, I mean, they're going to do it. If a kid wants to get on, if a kid wants to get a gun, if a kid wants to do drugs, if a kid wants to do OnlyFans, if there's a will, there's a way. So I have a problem with that part. In regard to the 16-year-olds and everything, listen, if you're a parent, I think it's your responsibility to make sure what your kid does and what they don't do. I know that there's safeguards to make sure the content that they're watching. I know kids, and Rob, we'll get to Rob at a point. You could put stuff where they're not on social media or there's, everything's blocked. They don't have the apps on the phone. What's up? Yeah. That's hilarious. But Amy, this is me because we never had it when we were young, and I guess we turned out kind of okay. Yeah. I think with the amount of crap that things like TikTok and Facebook with the underage stuff and the sexual stuff that they have there and Snapchat and all those, I wouldn't be against it. I think the kids with their developing brains, I think all these social media things sucks the life and the personality and their soul out of their bodies. I can't say how many times we go to eat and I just see these kids that are just like this. Even the parents, nobody's talking to each other. Nobody's communicating. When we go out and eat now, I'm not joking, guys, everybody's phones are on to the side. I want to experience life. I want to experience my family. I want to experience my friends. And I think at 16, the amount of stuff that's on there, the people, the predators, the shit that's happening, I don't like Australia's, COVID and all that type of stuff. But mind you, this is Australia, Amy, and you're from there, and I know you have firsthand of this. They care about kids all of a sudden. What happened during the pandemic? You guys were not only shutting down the schools, which is irreversible damage on these poor kids. I saw videos where they're shoving a mask on a kid that was like 2 or 3, and he's crying, and they're like, no, put it back on, and then you're vaccinated, mandatory.
Couldn't go outside, had to stay in your room, like literally probably stunted the social development of so many children who were like, those are very important years for socialization, learning different people skills that were stripped from these kids. Like, did they care about the children then?
Not at all. Not
They
at
had
all.
prison camps too, right?
They had all types of stuff.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
technically.
It's Australia. The whole continent is a prison camp.
Yeah, Rob.
That's true.
Rob, what do you think?
I'm a fan of regulating this for the safety of minors because I have a 15-year-old and I don't want, he's not on any social media. I don't like the screens. A constant argument that we have in our house revolves around the screens, and what we did was we just put in an incentive program, much like Pat talks about with his kids having to read books, right? I want my kids to do similar things. My 15-year-old, he has a condition called hemihypertrophy. It's a genetic disorder, which means one portion of his body grows a little bit larger than the rest. You can see it specifically in his legs. Like one leg looks like the size of double the other leg.
Really?
So you can see it up part of his body. There's nothing we can do about it. He doesn't have any type of health issues other than he's unbalanced so we've gotten him lifts. He does physical therapy, but he doesn't like doing stretching. One of the things we said in our house was, Ben, if you want to be able to get the screen time, then you need to do 30 minutes of stretching. You get 30 minutes of screen time. You do 30 minutes of yoga, you get 30 minutes of screen time. You have to earn that screen time in our house because it's not something that should just be given out. The screen should not be used as a tool to parent. It should be used as a tool to enrich, and you have to monitor it. So I have set up incentive programs, not just for the 15-year-old, but the 5-year-old. Your toys get cleaned up, then yes, you can have time on the iPad. He's homeschooled, so we do the coursework, then you can have time. You eat your vegetables, then you can have time. What you cannot regulate is what these kids are doing on social media. So the only way at this point, other than monitoring their phones all the time, is to have some type of law to protect them. And maybe this is what you're getting to. When we covered this on PBD Podcast, the chat was exploding and telling us that we were missing the whole point of this. It wasn't about protecting kids, but it was something more sinister. I won't allude to it, but if that's what you're getting at, the chat was roasting some of us. They're like, it's not about your kid being on Snapchat. It's about this. And I went, I didn't even think about that aspect of it.
So
I was going to ask that.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, my first thought is, what's their main source of news and information going to be? Because it's not like it's a cell phone ban, but it's a social media ban. Is it coincidence that's right around the time that X has taken over some degree of market share for information consumption? But I go back and forth between regulation and free market, because in this instance, like, I think it's poison and toxic for kids like that are under 16 to be on the screen to any degree, especially with social media. But at the same time, like, I don't like the government coming in and doing it for the parents.
Yeah.
I think it's like a survival of the fittest thing in terms of like who the responsible parents are that are going to actually take those steps to like make sure their kids do the healthy things.
Yeah.
Rather than the government.
Well, until Facebook. Well, here's the thing.
daddy
Until
state.
Facebook and TikTok and all these places stop having these perverts on there, because how many times is Zuckerberg going to go in front of Congress, bro? Get like, if a 16-year-old is signing up, then make it to where that's, because he has to put his age.
Right.
Like, I don't want no sexual content going after this freaking kid.
Well, they have the freaking ID verification on a ton of different apps now. So why can't they do that for the social media apps?
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
the other,
Do you want that?
the main core of the problem is that
I know, true.
it's a question of merit versus methods. Of like, in the same way that I support, in theory, something that makes pornography illegal, but I understand the process by which that is done is really not possible without a North Korea-style internet crackdown where the government controls all online information.
Right.
So the method there is questionable. For this, I also support keep kids off of social media. It's proven time and time again it's extremely harmful for them. But to Brandon's point, and to what Rob alluded to, there's no way they're doing this just for the good of kids. That's the thing they put out there as like, the thing up front, so that they can actually implement further controls down the line.
Exactly.
Vinny, you mentioned that you didn't like that it goes after the companies for it, but that's really the only enforceable way to do it. In the same way that as a parent, it's your responsibility to keep your kid from underage drinking, but a liquor store will be penalized if they sell your kid a 40
Yeah.
because they can't hold every individual parent liable unless they know about it through the store.
Yeah, that makes
Where
sense.
the reason they punish the stores for selling them is because they find out about that, and then usually they also go after the parents for child endangerment or something.
Yeah.
So I agree with it in theory. I think it's good to have kids off of social media. It's good to discourage screen time wherever possible. But I'm skeptical of the legislative steps they've taken to do it.
Yeah, I agree. It's like that saying, the end shouldn't justify the means, right? And in this particular instance, the end is actually something that's kind of in question, because they're fronting like this is something that's going to be extremely beneficial. And yes, to a degree, it will help kids with their mental health. I have a 15-year-old little brother. I asked him what he thought about it. He thinks it's going to be good for most kids' mental health. I asked my sister about it. She thinks that a lot of this LGBT stuff and the 20% of Gen Z identifying as LGBT, that would not be occurring if it weren't for the advent of social media. Like, so many kids need to touch grass. This is undoubtedly true, and I'm not denying any of that. The issue that really comes into place, and we can click on to the previous screenshot, please. I asked on my Instagram what people thought about this bill, specifically from Australia, and most people answered along the lines that you guys gave. However, there was one person here who was more than likely talking about what everybody in the PBD chat was talking about, where they said they aren't doing this for kids' safety. That's just the excuse they're doing it to force everybody onto digital ID.
Oh, shit.
So do you guys remember that my very first time ever on The Unusual Suspects, I came on and I talked about how Australia had implemented a digital identification bill, which would essentially consolidate every single means of identification that you use into one online centralized platform that will be shared with multiple different departments, multiple different agencies, right now just in the public sector. But that means anything you would need to access the public sector for, getting access to, government benefits, a range of different things would all require you to utilize a digital ID. Okay? Now, what's scary is when this is eventually going to move into the private sector, and this is a way to kind of condition people and in a way kind of use a form of predictive programming to get people used to the idea of this occurring. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you're
Okay, Adam.
if you're gonna what's my point?
Yeah.
So if you're gonna mandate ID for children to get on to check whether somebody's 16, it means they're not just checking 13, 14, 15-year-olds. They're going to have to check your ID if you're 16 and above as well. And guys, if we get to a point where every single person needs to be able to upload their ID in order to be able to use a social media platform, pardon my French, but we're fucked. You're basically giving them over the keys to your house, your digital footprint, like so much information, right? And that alone would be enough to really freak people out. But what's even more sinister is, again, this is all one giant push towards a North Korea or even CCP type system. And guys, I'm going to be one of the first to call it. I mean, I'm sure other people have actually called this before, but when it happens, come back and remember this moment. Australia, I believe, is going to be one of the first Western countries that are going to follow in the footsteps of countries like China, of, maybe not to the extent of North Korea, but, with implementing things like a social credit score, where, if for whatever reason you do something that the government doesn't like, you're protesting, you're speaking about something that goes against the narrative that they're trying to push. Not only are they going to be able to shut off your access to funds by taking away cash and implementing CBDC, but anything you would ever need your ID for, if you need to rent a car, if you need to rent a house, if you need to go anywhere, and now if you even need to access a social media platform, they could literally prevent you from doing that. And I know that sounds kind of tinfoil hat. I know it sounds kind of conspiratorial, but once again, let's remember that just a couple of years ago, they were literally tackling kids, throwing them in camps, and told them that they could not leave their freaking rooms unless they took the medicine that they were told that they needed to take.
And the most accurate part of that is that of all the people on the planet, it would unfortunately be the Aussies who would go first.
But is there any?
The UK,
It's a test kitchen.
the UK will be 6 months behind them, and the US will be about 10 years behind the UK.
Is there any
And that's
formidable
how it always
resistance
goes.
in Australia though? Like there's Pierre Poilievre in UK, Nigel Farage and Nigel Farage UK, Pierre in Canada. Is there anything like that in Australia?
I would say not to the same extent, but that's why for me it was so like I was literally so scared that Trump wasn't going to get elected, because I feel like even though they are completely, different countries and not necessarily allies in every single sense, I think that the direction that America is going to move in now and the mess that we're cleaning up is really going to set a precedent for a lot of places in the rest of the world. And so I just hope that for Australia, it's not already gone too far beyond the point where we can't do anything about it.
Well, they gave up their guns, so
That's what I mean. So
That's
that's
where it all went
why
downhill.
it is the perfect test bed to be able to implement all of this stuff before they roll it out elsewhere, is because what level of resistance do these people have? They have no means of being able to stand up to a tyrannical government.
Right.
So yeah, guys, I know it looks good and maybe it may indirectly have some good effects, but long term, like it's the same path, the same tyrannical path. They're just taking you a different route to get there,
Good point.
bitches. So if you like this clip, click right here. And if you want to see more like it, click right here. Stay angry, Patriots.